Good morning, students. I want to share a little bit about secure and insecure attachment. The bottom line really is, and you'll learn more about it in the video, is that parents, moms, dads, doesn't matter, what their sexuality is, but grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, whoever is responsible for the primary caretaking of the child, has to respond when the child cries. Children crying, sorry, that's my dog crying. Children need to understand that when they have a need, because the only way they have to communicate a need is by crying or screaming. So parents' jobs are to respond to the child by seeing if the diaper needs to be changed, holding the child, mirroring the child's emotions by looking into its eyes, responding positively, warmly, nurturingly, check to see if it's hungry, try to feed it. And of course, breast milk is the best way to feed a child because it enhances that bond between the primary caretaker, but that doesn't mean men can't do it either, i.e. be the primary caretaker for the child. Check to see if it's ill, check its temperature, wholly to the child through this mirroring process. So that's how the child becomes securely attached and learns the first developmental crisis or achieves it appropriately, and that is trust. I trust that people will respond to me in an appropriate way when I have a need. If the child does not learn to trust and it learns to mistrust, then as a result, relationships of all kinds, friendships, intimate partnership relationships will be extremely difficult because they will feel, especially if it's an insecure, anxious attachment, then it will definitely feel as though they're going to be abandoned eventually. And sometimes they can set that up incidentally, not intentionally, because of that fear of abandonment. Insecure attachment, avoidant, they do avoid intimacy. It's just feels so foreign to them. Parents who respond inconsistently can create an insecure, anxious attachment, or sometimes insecure avoidant, especially if there was physical abuse and sometimes sexual abuse. And if you're thinking babies don't get sexually abused or physically abused or neglected, they do. The most common type of abuse and neglect is the result of a parental caretaker. Avoidant, and insecure avoidant, I mentioned that, insecure, disorganized, very chaotic family organization, being completely neglected and abandoned. There's no inconsistency. So all these insecure attachments types, disorganized, avoidant, anxious, ambivalent, can result in a lot of mental health problems. And they can also result in acting out, i.e. for teenagers act out their pain aggressively, stealing, fighting, sometimes internalizing it and doing harm to themselves, suicide, substance abuse, self-cutting, and all types of those people can also end up in correctional institutions or juvenile institutions designed for delinquents. So when you think about those attachment styles, assuming you have a secure attachment and the child learns to trust, primary caretakers have other responsibilities other than making the child feel safe and loved and nurtured. The goal of parents who create a healthy child, i.e. physically healthy, emotionally healthy, high level of well-being, fairly satisfied with life, is that they first teach them these are emotions, right? You've probably seen those little diagrams with feelings on them, or feeling faces: happy, sad, angry, guilty, anxious, uptight, frustrated, scared. So teaching children how to identify their emotions and then how to verbalize it is a key task of parenting for toddlers. So communicating with your child, you must communicate with your child using words. That's how kids learn to talk. Teaching them about what a feeling is, where they feel it in their body, because feelings are demonstrated somatically. Teach them how to understand that is real important. Teaching them appropriate interpersonal skills. This is how you say hello. This is how you say goodbye. This is how you interact appropriately, with other kids. Now, at first, because kids' brains aren't particularly well developed, next week, you're going to see a film about brain development. They're creating millions and millions of connections in their brain every day. And they'll talk about that in this particular film. But what's really important to recognize is that that's why being a parent and a caretaker, primary caretaker, or caretakers for children is so, so important. So you're teaching them how to interact with other people. They're learning limits on their behavior. No, you're not screaming and yelling at them, because screaming and yelling is really scary when you're a little person. Remember, their brains not developed. This part of the brain, this problem solving part of the brain, doesn't fully develop until about age 25. And any kind of abuse or neglect can seriously halt or hamper brain development. Not halt, but certainly hamper or damage the development of the brain. That's my dog again, wanting attention. So what's emotions management? You're teaching them social skills. How do you eat at the table? You're teaching them how to go to the bathroom, toilet training. You're teaching them how to take care of themselves. You're teaching them coping skills. One of my favorite old scenes in This Is Us, story about the family, was when the father, Jack, used to get his child to just breathe when he was really anxious or angry or scared or sad. In the business I'm in, they call that mindful breathing. Long, deep inhales, long, deep exhales. That helps settle a person down from being really escalated in terms of highly emotional. So if you're really anxious before a test, the moral to the story is practice deep breathing. Meditation has similar benefits. All right, you're gonna meet the students. Okay, Joe. Sorry. I heard her. And this is little Ida. So if you want to say hello, she gets jealous when she hears me talking on telehealth or on Zoom. So this is Ida. Sorry, I heard her when I picked her up. So little Ida here has a secure attachment, we hope. Bonding happens with dogs in there and their mothers as well when they're little. So where was I? So interpersonal skills, social skills, problem solving, coping skills, deep breathing. Talk about what you feel. Tell me what happened. Let me check in with you when you look distressed. So you're teaching kids how to talk about what they feel, how to think about a problem, and you're also teaching them empathy. That very bond, that attachment between the infant and child, or between the infant and the primary caretaker, is teaching them trust as well as compassion and empathy, especially when the child's crying and you're holding them and talking to them lovingly. So they're learning coping skills, how to talk about what's wrong, how to ask for what they want and need. Really, really important. So all these are emotions management skills, interpersonal skills, social skills, and you're also teaching them to think, even though this problem-solving part of the brain doesn't become fully online until 25, is you teach them to think about conflicts with other kids, how to resolve it, how to apologize when they hurt somebody's feelings, how to be accountable for their behavior. All those things are so, so important. Trauma, being abused, being neglected, interferes with all that. So trauma being neglect, not being attended to properly in a nurturing, loving, supportive way that is also setting limits, being yelled at, screamed at, being hit repeatedly, being neglected, being sexually abused, being yelled and screamed at. All those things can harm a kid. in terms of both their attachment bond, their ability to trust, and their ability to manage their own emotions and ask for what they need or want. Let's see, how long have I been talking here? Not sure. See what else I wanted to say here. Let me think for a minute. I'm not sure. Emotions management, problem solving, interpersonal skills, compassion and empathy, trust. So if I grow up, oh, I know what I was going to say. Trauma. When trauma happens to kids especially, but to adults too, cortisol and adrenaline gets released. Repeated acts of abuse and neglect have a result of almost leaving the ability of this part of your brain to connect to the emotional part of the brain becomes severed or damaged. So it becomes really hard to manage feelings. That means people may be quick to anger, quick to have anxiety or fear. They may not know how to handle it. So when they get angry, it touches on rage. And rage is old, unfinished business, trauma. And that's when kids and sometimes adults act out or snap. The emotions become so powerful, they can't manage their behavior. Especially if traumatized as kids and they never receive help. So they never learn those skills on how to manage their behavior when they have these really, really big feelings that are super high. And in the business I'm in now, as a mental health therapist, I'm just very interested. You say hello. Then we teach them how to identify how powerful their feelings are using what we call a SUD scale, subjective units of distress, from 0 to 10, 0 being no difficult feelings, all 10 being, oh my God, this is the worst it's ever been. And that's when we ask them to kick in doing mindfulness skills. And mindfulness can even be gardening, walking, doing hiking in the woods in a mindful way, where you step, being aware of what you do. So gardening is very mindful, meditation, deep breathing. Yes, I just being mindful right now. Let's see. So the cortisol can trigger a trauma response. In other words, trauma results in fight, flight, running, avoidance, freeze, kind of a way of disassociating, you kind of go away, you're frozen and can't respond. Feign, which is kind of people pleasing, trying to take care of everybody else and ignoring your own needs. And then total collapse, which could mean fainting or long-term disassociation, or even short-term, not being fully present in the moment. That's why we call mindfulness skills, trying to be in the here and now rather than being trapped in the past or fearing the future. So these kinds of trauma responses can happen. And that's why when some people have a rage episode, they may not remember exactly what happened. It's like this part of the brain goes offline. It's like they're being abused again. If you liken it to a bear attack, trauma is the bear attack. And when you have a fight, flight, freeze, feign, collapse response, the bear's in the room in your brain, even though the bear is not in the room. It feels like the bear's in the room. So we call those triggers. So teaching people with trauma how to recognize their triggers is a real important part of treatment. And I'm going to talk about a lot in here because more and more prisons and juvenile delinquency facilities need to be trauma informed. There's lots and lots of people in prisons and in juvenile institutions have severe trauma or severe mental health problems. So this trauma and attachment can lead to mental health problems. And we know that people who act out, whether it's stealing or hurting other people or stealing from the government, being corrupt, have lots and lots of childhood trauma, neglect, abuse, and then become pretty dysfunctional human beings. And they can be the doctor or the person next door They can be a politician, they can be a judge, they can be a teacher, they can be anybody. So if at any time you get triggered in the class by anything I say, please take care of yourself. Do some deep breathing, stop the film at any time. And if you have questions, please email me. Take care. Welcome to the first week of class. Bye.